Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ali Fallahzadeh. I want to present my article which is going to be shown in the conference in the 11th Singapore International Conference in Social Science and Humanities in June 23rd and June 24th, 2022. I am postdoctorate research fellow in Alzahra University under the host supervisor, Associate Professor Dr. Zahra Rahbarnia, Faculty of Art, Department of Artistic Research, Alzahra University, Tehran, Iran. Okay, here is my title of my article, Goldman Pluralistic Approach to Aesthetic Experience in Case of Mondrian's Intuitive Neoplastic Art. Let's have a short overview on the background of the study, what I'm going to discuss. In my article, actually, I consider two different approaches to aesthetic experience, which is a very hot and very frontier, actually, topic in the aesthetics. Amongst different kinds of approaches to aesthetic experience, I chosen the Goldman thesis, recent thesis of the Goldman, Alan H. Goldman, which is the pluralistic approach on aesthetic experience versus the formalist approach to aesthetic experience, which is based on the intuition and disinterested mode of aesthetic attention, what Schopenhauer and Kant discussed. So first, look at the right side, okay, let's say here, okay, to see what is the pluralistic approach to aesthetic experience. Unlike the formalists who claim that the spectator should look at the art object only through his intuition and through a disinterested mode of attention, the aestheticians, actually in the contemporary era, argue that the experience of the aesthetic value of the artworks cannot be achieved only by depending on intellect or emotions or perception. That is the simultaneous, as you can see here, involvement of the perceptions, cognition, imagination, and emotion. All the faculties of the mind are involved in aesthetic experience. And Goldman is not alone in this, actually, thesis. Gadamer, Crowther, Dewey, Dickey, Cohen, Eldridge, and Levinson, and many more actually developed this thesis. On the other side here, we have a unilateral approach to aesthetic experience, which holds that the aesthetic experience mainly, depends on the perception and the senses, what we look, what we hear, right? And the pleasures that it creates in us. So, for example, Clive Bell and Roger Fries consider significant form, actually, as formal relations of the paintings and the relationship between them as important for aesthetic experience. And for them, the intuition and perceptions or perceptual faculties of the mind is the most important thing. And they don't consider no role for other faculties of the mind like imagination, cognition, especially cognition and emotion. And they're influenced by Schopenhauer and Kant, who said that the spectators should attend to the work only through a disinterested mode of aesthetic attention, or look at the art as an end in itself, okay, without considering his historical, cultural, and other contexts. Okay, here is just overview. I move on. So what is the problem and gap in the literature for my research? The main problem here is that for the evaluation of the aesthetic values of modern paintings or modern art in general, that is usually free or devoid of any representational or expressive contents, the spectators or even the art critics usually tends to use a formalist approach, like Greenberg, like Roger Fry, or Clive Bell, to look at only the formal and relationship between the elements of the painting, and that's it. And they don't look at the context, historical context, its cultural context, where or when the art was created, and so on. So here I wrote it. Although intuitive approach of Piet Mondrian, actually, for creation of his neoplastic art, as acknowledged by Mondrian's and majority of scholars, namely Brockam, Carmin, and others, is evident, yet very little has been said about his position on aesthetic experience and the way spectators should perceive and experience his no-plastic paintings. So here's our Piet Mondrian. I just photo of Piet Mondrian. I just go fast because I want to focus on here. So what Piet Mondrian did is the very big in the modern era. He changed from representational painting, he created around 900, for example, his example, to what you see in the right side. Okay, so it's all created by the vertical or horizontal lines, primary colors, and what we call non-colors. I mean, gray, black, and white. So reduce all, actually, or eliminate all the representational factors and expressive elements in the painting to express the universal beauty as truth, as he said, or a universal equilibrium or harmony in the painting. I don't want to discuss a lot because my PhD thesis is about Piet Mondrian, and this article is about aesthetic experience, and I choose Piet Mondrian as a case study, as a paradigm, as the best paradigm of the modern art for my study, because it represents the best example of what I'm going to show in my article. So, for example, here is one of the Piet Mondrian's paintings. You can see is all primary colors, non-colors, and vertical and horizontal lines. And here so on. And the problem is that when the spectators look at these kind of paintings, they usually tends to actually analyze the formal properties, formal elements like line, color, or planes, and nothing more. And I want to show you that when the spectators, as Goldman and others argue, look at these kind of paintings, pure abstract paintings or pure abstract art, they should use all the mental faculties: cognition, emotions, imagination, and perception. But the formalists say that the perception is the most important thing in evaluation of the aesthetic value of the artworks. Okay, so here's another example of Piet Mondrian's painting. And okay, so the objective of my research is to assess the validity of the thesis of the contemporary aestheticians, particularly Goldman, who purport that even when spectators attend to form and formal qualities, they should attend to art objects through a pluralistic mode, or interactive and simultaneous involvement of all mental faculties, namely perception, imagination, emotion, and cognition. So here I illustrate my objective of the study. As you can see here, we have pluralistic approach on the left side, that aesthetic experience, that Goldman says that aesthetic experience involves the involvement of all faculties, simultaneous and correlation of all these faculties. I want to show the applicability of pluralistic approach or workability of this approach on aesthetic experience of modern arts. And I choose, by focusing on the Goldman thesis, I choose Piet Mondrian as a main paradigm of the pure abstract painting to prove the hypothesis of this thesis in this article, actually. Okay, so here is my hypothesis. Neoplastic art, as one of the most sophisticated instances of pure abstract painting, created based on the premises of formalism, can be truly perceived by using a pluralistic mode of aesthetic experience rather than a formalist approach. So here's my hypothesis I want to actually prove, and I prove it in my article. So how I approach to achieve the objective of my study, research methodology or research method. I analyze Piet Mondrian's theoretical writings because Piet Mondrian is not only a painter, he's a theoretician, that's why I chose him. I analyze his writings by using intertextuality, and through two different lenses: formalist approach to aesthetic experience. What Schopenhauer says that aesthetic experience is intuitive and only by using the perception of the spectators, versus pluralistic approach, which Goldman focused. So I analyze Piet Mondrian's writing through these two lenses and compare them to see which one is most works for them, right? Okay, Why Piet Mondrian? Just to say why I choose Piet Mondrian, why I didn't choose Malevich or Kupar or I don't know Picasso, because Piet Mondrian is a very actually is a painter and theorician, a very important person in the modern era who improved or developed the modern painting to its end. He has two books of Piet Mondrian, I mean two collections, two big collection of most complete collections of him. The left side is 1986, is published 1986 by Holzman, Harry Holzman and Martin James, and the right side is published by Louis Smith in Netherlands in 2017. And he is one of the Piet Mondrian's writing. As you can see, he wrote a lot and he was very obsessed with writing and amending his thought and his theories. And you can see there are 12 anthologies of Piet Mondrian's writing, and they have been translated to different kinds of languages like Italian, English, German, Spanish, Japanese, Czech, and so on. And here's I just illustrated for my PhD thesis as well on 2 years ago, and you can see on the blue line here that Piet Mondrian as a painter, and on the orange or red actually line you can see when he starts writing. So you can see at least half of his artistic career is dedicated to writing while he was painting. So he's a painter and theorician. He's a very, very big theorician in the modern era. That's why I chose him as a case study of my article. Okay, so let's go on here. Here, as I discussed in my article, actually, we can divide two different actually standpoints toward aesthetic experience in general. Some, scholars like David Fenner or others believe on contextualism in art. And what contextualism is saying that is very simple. That in a very simple words, you can say that the aesthetic values of the artworks depends on its context, historical context, cultural context, social context, political context, and so on. And one cannot only look at the formal elements of the painting, for example, and just realize or experience the aesthetic value of the artworks. You should know when that artwork is created, who created it, under which social context is created, and so on. And I categorize the pluralistic approach of aesthetic experience of Goldman under this category, because for knowing this kind of context, we need to know about all these things, and we need to use all our mental faculties: cognition, we need to use perception, imagination, and emotions all together. And what Alan Goldman says in his thesis is aesthetic experience involves active and simultaneous engagement of all our mental faculties: perception, imagination, emotion, and cognition. On the other side, on the right side, we have decontextualism. That I believe that they falls under the formalist approach falls under the decontextualism, because decontextualism considers no role for different kind of context of the artworks, right? For example, historical, cultural, and social. They say that the spectators should only attend to the artwork itself and nothing more. There is no artist is not important, his intention is not important, his historical context is not important. Only he should look at the artwork as an end in itself, or through a disinterested mode of aesthetic attention, which Schopenhauer said. Okay, let's say what Piet Mondrian says about aesthetic experience. Okay, here is actually a findings in my article. You can see in the right side. Piet Mondrian says, in some instances, he says something like, formalist. He says that a spectator should contemplate on the work of art, or intuition, objective vision is required to realize the pure beauty as truth, as Bell, for example, called it ultimate reality. Or he just explicitly refers to the Schopenhauerian notion, disinterested contemplation, or like formalist, Piet Mondrian holds that universal beauty can only be experienced in the moment of ecstasy and contemplation, and that spectators should contemplate on pure forms as an end in itself, following what Kant and Schopenhauer said. So as you can see in the left pane, actually he says something very, very close to what Forman is saying, or a unilateral approach, or using perception for the aesthetic experience. However, after analyzing his writings and what he says and his quotes, it appears that it is very clear that what is said in favor or as proponents of the formalists is aesthetic attention or aesthetic attitude rather than an experience. But in some other cases, when we analyze Piet's writing, he also says that in the right pane or right column, he considers very important role for cognitive faculties of mind or aesthetic experience, especially intellect or emotions. Pure intuition or objective vision is composed of intellect and emotion for him, and he holds that spectators perceive a work of art through feelings, and then what is perceived became clear through intellect, and it is defined by reason and recognized by spirit or consciousness. It is important that we know that Piet considers no role for imagination, as Goldman said. Out of the four faculties, Goldman says perception, cognition, imagination, and emotions. He considers no role for imagination, or what he called fantastic feelings. So we find that Piet, like a recent argument of Goldman, consider a pluralistic approach to aesthetic experience. Okay. Here's my conclusion. I just illustrated to make it easier to understand. As you can see, both Goldman's pluralistic approach and Piet's pluralistic approach, they are both pluralistic, and both says that the aesthetic attention, not aesthetic experience, is intuitive. Okay, it is based on the disinterested contemplation of the work of art and formal elements. But the aesthetic experience for both of them is pluralistic, except that Piet considered no role for imagination actually, so it wasn't important. But when we read the Piet writings through the lens of the Goldman pluralistic approach, we find that it is very, very similar to Goldman rather than to the formalists, as it was discussed a lot before. So we come to the new conclusion that Piet's main argument on aesthetic experience is closer, or most closest to actually to the pluralistic approach of Goldman rather than the formalists like Greenberg or Roger Kleiber. Although he created, Piet created his art on that area when Roger Fry and Kleiber published their work on formalism, but his attitude toward the aesthetic experience is pluralistic. So here's what I found in my article, and I really appreciate your attention. I have to make it short because it should be around 50 minutes. I think it's 18 minutes now. Thanks for your attention. I am Dr. Ali Fallahzadeh, as I said in the beginning, postdoctoral research fellow in Alzahra University under the host supervisor, Associate Professor Dr. Zahra Rahbanian, Faculty of Art, Department of Artistic Research, Alzahra University, Tehran, Iran. Okay, bye.